everybody. My name is Allison Wooten. I'm from Texas A&M University, and I worked on this with Dr. Gary Wingenbach. And we're going to be talking about consumer knowledge and confidence of the U.S.-China agricultural trade disputes. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Thank you so much. So just a little bit of background. In the recent years, the U.S.-China agricultural trade dispute has been creating a lot of tension between the world's two largest economic powers. So that's been causing a lot of tension, a lot of tension. Yeah, I'm sorry. You can go ahead and go. Oh, thank you. We found that American consumers have varying knowledge about agricultural trade with China, and they also have varying levels of confidence in relation to China's products. And we also found that few Americans have substantial and concrete understanding of global trade, tariffs, and the ripple effects of international trade at the consumer level. And so we wanted to ask, is knowledge and confidence of products different for different groups such as younger versus older, or rural, oh my goodness, I can't talk today, I'm sorry, rural versus urban, and some other groups. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Wingenbach.
Thanks, Allison. So this study actually initiated back in 2019. My former doctoral student is the agricultural attaché for the U.S. Embassy in China. And in meeting with different trade groups that were coming to China, and with the Chinese businesses that they interacted with, the Chinese businessmen always would ask, how much do American consumers know about China and what we produce? And the American businessmen, I don't know, probably not very much, because we don't need to. We produce everything. Yet the Chinese are saying, we produce better wine than Australia, and we're selling that wine in California, who also produces wine. We've been studying Americans for 50 years, their tastes, their preferences, what they want. So they said, if you want to stay in this game, maybe Americans need to become a lot more aware about China's products and their potential. And we went, how much do we know? We probably don't know very much. So we set out to find out what's the knowledge about trade issues and confidence. This is a much bigger story. We're focusing on this one right here. And then see if there was differences. Next slide. And so first we started out, and this was at the time of President Trump's initiating the tariffs and et cetera. And if you recall those days in late 2019, early 2020, the states that were most affected by those tariffs and those trade issues were in the upper Midwest, the Corn Belt, and the hog producing region. So we used the census data geographic location called Midwest, which includes 12 states. And first we said, look, we're going to get random samples from students at every land-grant university. And so we sent out contacts, went through IRB approval, got everything approved, and then we sent out notices to contacts at the 12 land-grant universities in the upper Midwest. And we got responses back from all of them except South Dakota and Michigan. So the next phase, thanks to some colleagues at Texas Tech University, clued me into an online sample provider called Marketing Systems Group. And I contacted them and I said, look, I've got these 10 states now. 2 of them didn't make, but we need a random sample of the public from those 10 states. And we want about 300, and you have to ensure that 19% of them have a rural residence, because that's what the average population is for the U.S. that lives in rural. They said, okay, yeah, no problem. So we put together our knowledge questions, which are these 20 questions, and they're based on facts that have been reported in the press in USA Today about the trade embargo. You know, it's 500 billion that the U.S. purchases from China every year in goods and services, while China only purchases 200 billion from the U.S., which is, if you do that with your own checkbook, you would see that you would run into the red really fast. And so other questions about that, where's the most rice produced, pork produced, et cetera, et cetera. And these were multiple choice questions. We had very high confidence when we got, no, that's okay, go on. And then we did everything online. So 131 College of Ag students, 305 from the public. They would describe themselves as being mostly as being white, being female, 35 or over a third being college age. Now in the public group, they drew, you know, random samples, and so there were college students in that public group as well. But the vast majority were in non-rural. However, we did meet our rural quota, so we were good to go. All right, so what did we find out? College students, whew, thank goodness, were significantly more knowledgeable about U.S. China trade issues than were the public. Now, just as we started collecting data, the world changed. COVID struck, people were sent home, offices locked down, work from home, which actually really improved our response rate because people are sitting there and saying, hey, wait a minute, I could get $5 to complete this survey? Yeah, I'm going to do that instead of play Pac-Man or whatever they play now. And so it boosted the response rate, and you know, it blew my mind how fast the responses came in because COVID shut everything off. And so I'm pretty sure that might have influenced also what we found out. But by and large, you know, they all failed the knowledge exam. I mean, pretty poorly too. Only 12% of the students and just 5% of the public got a quote-unquote passing score, or what in academia we would call passing, which is 60% or more correct responses. College students did outscore the public on several key issues, which was China's population is roughly 4 times that of the United States, which is a basic fact we should all know, no matter where we're at. It's pretty easy to figure out that China is dependent of upwards of 80% or more of its soybean consumption, and they get that from the US and from Brazil, so they're buying a lot to support that hog production that they've got. And that also, that China outproduces others in terms of rice. So, go to the next slide. So we found out that they were, you know, knowledgeable on key items, and especially we were looking at those soybean questions and those hog questions, because that was where the effect was being felt in the Midwest. And of course, in another part of this study, we teased that out, and we found out that rural respondents were very supportive of President Trump's actions in order to balance out trade, even though those very actions hurt their hog and soybean production enterprises. But, you know, I guess for the greater good. Other findings, so then I'll go back just one. So we were taking a look at were they confident, and we focused on 4 products: clothing, food, pet food, and then technology. Because those were the 4 primary items listed in the trade issues, tariffs and quotas and etc. And so we looked at made in the US versus made in China. Next. And overall, again, because China was in the press a lot about the trade war going on, and these specific items were mentioned, the general public said we've got low confidence in clothing, food, and pet food produced in China. Oddly, the students were like, it doesn't matter. There was a significant shift. If you were younger, you're like, I'm moderate or I have high confidence. They had a high confidence in the IT, while the public had low confidence for IT. Again, the don't know why that would matter. It's IT is IT, but you know, there were some pet food issues in the news about you know, some bad ingredients, but anyway, low confidence. So we had a range. Next slide. And the students, yeah, about the durability of clothing compared to the public. Who looks at it? Thank you. Who looks at a label on the clothing? I guess I don't know, but perhaps that does make a difference. It certainly did for our students compared to the public. But again, I think that was there was some sentiment about just hearing "made in China" at that particular time in history that maybe affected people's confidence in products that really the durability or the IT, the trustworthiness of IT wasn't really affected by the trade war. It was the same before as it is during and after. Now, the food you could make a case on, and certainly more recently with the you know, with the supply chain issues we've been having. I don't know if I want, you know, frozen shrimp sitting on a boat out there for 8 months and then get to my grocery store. I don't know, but that's up to you. So back to you, Allison.
Yeah.
What are your recommendations?
So just a few things to kind of wrap up. So obviously the most glaring thing we found was the overall respondents' lack of knowledge about the U.S.-China trade disputes, and that was very concerning to us. We believe that we need to increase collective knowledge about China and agricultural trade and related issues, because this affects both Americans and the people of China alike. It's very important to all of us. And we argue that factual understanding of these issues is very contingent upon valid perceptions of international relations, trade, and agriculture. We believe that the media and faculty at universities really need to be sharing this very factual, correct information regarding these issues, so people have a very solid and thorough understanding of the issues going on right now. We also found that confidence in Chinese and U.S. products may indicate perceived importance of the product quality, reliability, or durability in the marketplace, and it also might very reflect the beliefs about international trade. We believe that future purchases may be influenced by confidence in products' quality, reliability, durability, and or the country of origin. So you might wonder, like, what are some other factors influencing these purchases? And this might include the price, availability, or shopping preferences. And we believe that more research is needed to understand these factors affecting young purchasers' market preferences in order to move forward in a more knowledgeable and effective way. So that's it. Thank you very much. I guess questions? Thank you. Does anybody?
So, I don't know if you did not elaborate on it or didn't study it, but I want to ask you about the construct of, I don't even know what to call it, patriotism, nationalism, just the belief, the idea of Buy American, Buy USA, and how that is integrated into your model as far as looking at people's buying decisions.
Yeah, I don't think we really looked at that too much, and that's definitely, I would believe that would be much more prevalent now with the pandemic. That would have been a great thing to include. But this was done kind of before the pandemic and like as that went on. So it would have been a great thing to include. We didn't really elaborate too much on that. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Dr. Wingenbach.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Dr. Brashears, and I think it would be important to include that phrase or that construct during the data collection, so there was no mistaking that people were responding specifically to that intent. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we didn't have that. There were questions, and by the way, all the perception questions came from MSNBC polls, Wall Street Journal polls, so we have years and years of data on their trends. We use the exact same questions. You know, who is to blame for the trade issues with China? The President, Congress, and we use the exact same descriptors. And we ask, again, this is another part of that's not reported here, but what are your political ideologies? Democrat, independent, Republican, somewhere. Are you conservative, moderate, liberal, etc.? And down the line, you could overlay MSNBC's results, the Wall Street Journal on top of ours, and see the exact same thing. Democrats, liberals opposed everything about the trade war. Republicans, conservatives agreed with every action taken to balance the trade war. And urban opposed it and rural supported it.
Which is incredible because it is so counterintuitive.
It is.
And my family that raises cattle were so supportive of it, and it was costing them money every month.
Exactly the same with the soybean producers and the hog producers in the Midwest. It cost them enormously, but they were supportive of every action from the president or Congress to balance trade.
So I don't want to monopolize the conversation here.
Well, you don't know why that is the case.
See, that's where I think we need to go back and say, you know, about nationalism, or, you know, how much does that weigh in your purchasing or your support of the economy, simply because we didn't ask that, so I don't want to assume that that was the reason. But I believe it has a tendency to move that direction.
Yeah.
Now, and the same way, because we talked about availability and prices, so in all my classes, I always ask, you know, students, well, what do you feel about, or what are your intentions about buying U.S. products versus products made elsewhere? Always U.S. So, okay, how many of you have taken an oath to stop shopping at Walmart? No one raises their hand. I said, how many of you shop at Walmart? All the time. Why? Well, because it's the best prices. I said, so price is driving your decision. I said, because almost none of those products are made in the U.S. You understand it? Oh, but it's so convenient. Oh, so convenience and price drives your decision. And so, like many things, there's this cognitive dissonance between what I think versus what I do. I like to think I'm this thing, like one of those Greek god statues I saw in Athens. What I'm not is this lumpy old man, you know, I'm really just this lumpy old man, you know. So, perception versus reality. But if you ask your family, why would you support these insane trade issues? They would say, because.
Because what we heard earlier is because my neighbor does. Because
Yes.
my friends do.
Yes.
That's what I see on Facebook.
Yes.
And I mean, and all that started over something that's been brewing for 20 years about China ignoring our patents on technology and reverse engineering a lot of our equipment from John Deere, from Apple,
Yes.
from
Can I ask another
those
question?
countries.
Yes.
How much data did you collect before the the start of the pandemic and then after? Because I know there was increased sentiment towards China just because of the origins of the virus, and I just wonder how that affected people's consumer.
So that's another thing that we were already collecting data when it, you know, it was like, oh no, perception has got to be radicalized because it was being associated as the origin of trade. So we had collected all of our college data before, and the U.S.-China agriculture trade issue was the #1 thing trending. You know, you could type it in Google and see what's trending, and that was in all the headlines. As soon as the shutdowns happened, that turned off, and everything went to COVID, and we were just starting to collect the data from the public. And I said, oh, this has got to have an effect, but I have no way of measuring that because it's not part of what we
were approved to collect?
Okay, thank you.
That's a great question, and I'm sure it had an effect.
Field work is messy.
What's that?
Field work is messy.
Yeah.
Stuff happens.